at this point, I'm probably pretty late to the draw. So, for those of you who may remember, the term orcs was trending on Twitter back in April for, it might have only been a few days. Regardless, if you at this point still don't understand how Twitter works, you may not have thought it to be a very innocuous subject. However, if you're like me, and you see something that is out of the ordinary, such as orcs trending, you may get this visceral feeling in your gut that something isn't right. I try to be optimistic when I see unusual trends on Twitter, but as it turned out in this case for orcs, the actual reason that it was trending was because of the resurfacing of what was apparently an old complaint about how races are depicted in Dungeons & Dragons, and the biggest complaint was how orcs in this case were depicted. This argument is that the depictions and descriptions of orcs in the latest publication, Volo's Guide to Monsters by Wizards of the Coast, uses language that is very similar to how African tribes were depicted by early colonists. Like a rather trivial topic to discuss, I'd like to iterate and explain that the actions that took place after this event by Wizards of the Coast actually fit into a larger pattern by not only the company, but as society at large. This offensive text by Wizards of the Coast, let's take a look. Most orcs have been indoctrinated into a life of destruction and slaughter, but unlike creatures who by their very nature are evil, such as gnolls, it's possible that an orc, if raised outside its culture, could develop a limited capacity for empathy, love, and compassion. No matter how domesticated an orc might seem, its bloodlust still flows just beneath the surface. With its instinctive love of battle and its desire to prove its strength, an orc trying to live within the confines of civilization is faced with a difficult task. So the question still remains, is this depiction of orcs racist? Well, let's find out. Let's break it down. So first I'd like to clarify that orcs are not humans. So the use of the word race in this situation is more akin to the word species for our purposes. Yes, orcs are bipedal, they're sentient beings. That's also known as humanoid or similar to humans. But again, they're not the same. So you can't use the same descriptors. You can't describe orcs and humans in the same way because they're not the same. So just as you wouldn't describe something like goblins or bugbears like you would a human, you can't use these descriptors like orcs. They are different and they deserve their own modes of descriptions. Most orcs have been indoctrinated into a life of destruction and slaughter. That's the first line. It's indoctrinated into them. It's part of their culture. But this doesn't mean that they can't break out of it. It says that they are able to develop compassion and empathy, and you're able to do that in your role playing. That's the whole beauty of it. You can choose what to do with your character as you see fit, whether it be a player character or an NPC. When we get to the part that it says, no matter how domesticated an orc might seem, its bloodlust still flows just beneath the surface. With its instinctive love of battle and its desire to prove its strength, an orc trying to live within the confines of civilization is faced with a difficult task. Difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. Now, I think this is where a lot of people found issue in the paragraph, that it says that they are limited in capacity and that they're struggling within society. But when I read this, I see that Wizards of the Coast has taken the time to create a truly diverse set of characters and creatures and species within their worlds of D&D. They have given players and dungeon masters alike a rich tapestry from which to develop a character that has problems that they can overcome, that actually builds rewarding characters and actually interesting characters. I think those who see an issue in this description are only seeing the one thing, the problem they want to see, and they're seeing it through that social justice lens of racism, and only through racism. And when you look at the world through this lens, that is all you see. You will always see a problem, no matter where it is. If you are constantly looking for it and looking for the racism or the sexism or whatever it might be that is your chosen cause, you will find it. I guarantee you. That is how the world works. We are diverse. We are different. There are problems that occur. So let me give you a different opinion, a different point of view. Let's say that each race in D&D is representative of a different trait or archetype that is ubiquitous to mankind. In viewing it in this way, we might see that the elves represent mankind's penchant for the arts, and this is represented in their increase in dexterity. Humans represent man's industriousness, which means that they get an increase in all of the statistics. Dwarves represent our mechanical prowess, and they get an additional 2 to their constitution. Orcs represent man's brutish and bloodthirsty knack for war, which is within mankind as a species. It gives them +2 strength, -2 intelligence, and -2 charisma, which says something about man's thirst for war, not about orcs or a specific type of person. Halflings represent innocence and childishness and impishness. They get an increase in dexterity. Gnomes represent this impishness as well, this mischievousness. And tieflings represent outsiders and loners. It's important to note here that none of these characteristics inherently reflect any specific ethnic background of humanity, but I'll come back to that. That Wizards of the Coast seems to be following over these past few months. They are buckling under social pressures to change their games and have ultimately decided to change the way that orcs and races in general, from the looks of it, are portrayed within D&D, in their lore and their rulebooks, henceforth following this outcry. Here's how Wizards of the Coast responded to these events in their official statement. Essentially what it's saying is that from here on out, every reprinting will have these effective changes. Now, going forward with their new books that they're releasing, if you want to have these changes immediately, you will need to buy new material for your already existing games. So while they're not forcing current players to change at the moment, in the future they will be abolishing, essentially, the terms good and evil from any specific race. There will not be any enemy factions or races inherent in the game. That will be up to the DM to create. Prepared for more of these inevitable changes that we've been seeing across gaming and popular culture platforms in the past few months and even years continue in Dungeons & Dragons. So before I finish, I'd like to reiterate one of my points that I made earlier, that humans are not the same. There are many pure and good humans. There are many awful and terrible people for blatant reasons such as overt racism and others who manipulate and try to change the world around them so that everything is exactly as they believe that it should look and feel, while others still just want to be left alone and play their favorite games and not bother anyone. The world is to be viewed as it is, not as you think that it should be. The answer to this is not to coerce companies to bow down to your will so that you can tell yourself that you are a good person.